morning. I'm Kimberly Bishop, Associate State Director at AARP Michigan. I'd like to start by thanking you for spending a little time with us this morning for Learn a Latte. If it's your first time, welcome. If you've been here with us before, welcome back. Today we'll be talking about home safety for older adults. A 2019 survey conducted by AARP shows that 3 out of 4 adults aged 50 and older want to stay in their homes and communities as they age. Unfortunately, many don't see that happening for them. So today we'll be talking about no cost, yes, no cost, low cost, and other things that people can do to make their homes safer for older adults and actually anyone in the home. So I'd like to introduce Brian Elliott. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Kim.
Brian's the Outreach and Accessibility Director and Certified ADA Coordinator at Disability Connections. Disability Connections is a center for independent living covering Jackson, Lenawee, and Hillsdale counties. I'd like to thank Brian for spending some time with us this morning. As I was doing a little bit of research to prepare for this session, I realized that there is more than just home safety for older adults, because a lot of what we'll talk about will make the home safer and more accessible for family members and visitors of all ages and abilities. I have a couple questions that I'd like to start out with for Brian, but I'd like to invite all of our viewers to type their questions in the comments section, and then I'll ask Brian to answer them live, if that sounds okay. Is that good for you, Brian?
That sounds great.
Very good. So I know that falls are a main source of injuries for older adults in homes. What can people do to help avoid falls?
There are really some simple things that you can do, and it's removing clutter that's around, kind of picking things up off of the floor that are there. You can remove throw rugs that are around. They'll get kind of bunched up, and that will just create kind of a tripping hazard for people. Um, Other things that you could do is placing the cords along the walls so that they're not going across the floor, so that you don't have to worry about, again, getting your toes or part of your foot stuck on something and going down. Something else that it's just making everything a little bit more open, and like I said, kind of removing the clutter so that you have space to move around, especially if you happen to be using a mobility device or something like that. It makes it so that you're not running into obstacles that might be there that you may not have noticed otherwise. And these are all pretty simple things that you can do with just a little bit of organizing, and it doesn't really cost you anything to make some of those changes within a home. It's just kind of thinking a bit about how you're going to move around and what is actually around you when you're in your home.
So it's interesting that you mentioned mobility devices. And I know that people may be thinking about, wheelchairs or walkers or canes. But when you have little ones learning to walk, and whether it's a stroller or a walker, or, just the fact that their gait is also could also be a little bit unsteady. A lot of the things that we think about as being helpful for older adults also help other members of the family as well.
Absolutely. It's one of those things of once you do them, once you make the place a little bit more accessible, you're never going to notice, oh, that's only accessible because there's somebody that has a disability or somebody that is using a mobility device. It's just open and accessible. You don't think of it specifically in those terms anymore. It's something that all people would be able to use and all people would benefit from. They're not going to have to worry about getting stuck or tripping any of those certain circumstances that could make a unfortunate incident in a home.
Great. And again, welcome to all of those who are watching. If you have questions, please feel free to type them in the comments section so I can ask Brian. And welcome to those of you who are watching us this morning. So you've given us some great ideas. Can we talk a little bit about specific rooms in the house and how we might make those safer?
Absolutely. Um, one of the things that we can start with is a bathroom. Every home is going to have a bathroom, so why not make it something that, especially if you're building or remodeling or thinking of a design or just adapting to make it so it's accessible maybe long term, or you're thinking for the long term because you want to maybe age in place and maybe the next place you're looking at. There's some simple things that you can do for a bathroom that would make it a little bit more accessible for everybody. um, some of those things might be installing some grab bars um, into the bathtub, or creating a roll-in shower that doesn't have a tub for people to step up and over. Um, Something else you could do is you can get a raised toilet seat so it's not as low to the ground, and maybe some grab bars on the side. Um, and part of those things is the grab bars, and those changes aren't really all that expensive. When you talk with a contractor or somebody that works around it, it's kind of a simple add-on that people can make, and it makes it a little bit safer long term. Um, Something else you could do is putting rubber mats in the bottom of a tub, or using a shower chair or a shower bench in there, um, and maybe adding a handheld shower head, something that you can move around a little bit more, so that you don't have to be moving around on a wet surface. Those are definitely ways that you can help improve the accessibility of a bathroom, and they're not really any changes that make it so people can't use it. It's something that everybody would be able to use as well. Um, then getting space in there, that if you are using a mobility device, such as a wheelchair, or you have a walker, that you're able to have space next to a toilet so that you can transfer over, or you can transfer into a bathtub and a shower. Um, those are really, it's kind of the basic ideas for making a accessible bathroom. Um,
So,
I want to say
Brian, can you
one
explain? Is
other
that,
thing.
oh, I'm sorry,
One other
what?
thing. Sorry. One other thing
No,
to do is to um, set your thermostat with the water heater so that it can't go too hot. Something that, if you happen to have a spinal cord injury, or if you have some other types of disability and you don't have feeling, that water can get too hot and the person might not be able to know that it's actually burning or doing them harm. But because they can't feel it, they don't recognize that. By setting the water temperature, you can avoid having some of those potential injuries and avoid getting burns on your skin. And it's not just for older people. Think of when you have infants or younger kids, you don't want them to be in super hot water either.
no, that's a great point. Or even washing dishes. I can recall my husband's aunt. I swear she would have that water so hot, and when I went to wash dishes, I had to remember that I needed to make some adjustments, and I think that's just what she was used to. And I hadn't thought about the fact that maybe she couldn't feel it, and that's why it was so warm. So you're mentioning some really good things. One of the questions I was going to ask, and we don't need to put the slide up again, but what was that circumference? Was that to allow for a wheelchair to turn?
Yeah, so we look for, when you have and you're creating an accessible bathroom, for a 5 foot circle, and that creates enough room for a wheelchair to be able to turn around in the space and stay within the restroom, or the bathrooms. I use restroom kind of thinking of as um, when you go out to eat or something, the restrooms there. Sometimes those can be inaccessible, but if you think of the design having a 5 foot circle as a chance, that makes it so that you can spread around and turn a wheelchair and be able to get over there. Um, and then I see there's a question coming in about the water temperature, and you don't want it to be more than 120 degrees. That'll help keep the reduce burns for people, so it's a little more safer, and it gets doesn't get beyond. Like I said, for somebody that doesn't have the sensation, it's something that you can really just simply avoid.
Perfect. Thank you. So, as we've talked about the bathroom a little bit, what about the bedroom? As we age, sometimes we spend a little bit more time in our bedrooms. I think I take more naps now than than I used to. How can we make bedrooms safer?
Bedrooms, a good way to make bedrooms a little bit safer is to kind of get a firmer mattress so that it's a little easier for you to have a little bit more support and reduce the risk of becoming kind of trapped. If you know that like some of the newer beds, or if you put the toppers on mattresses, they're kind of like these sponge things that people just get kind of stuck inside. Um, Something else to kind of think of is, what are you using for doorknobs and door handles, and light switches, making it so that it's going to be easier, and maybe even adapting some of those to some smart technology. If you get a smart light that you might be able to turn off with a phone, or so that you don't have to get up and out of bed to be able to do some of these things. If you make some simple hardware changes for door handles, light switches, um, and thinking of those type of things, it makes it a little bit so that, again, it's not changes that people are going to say, "Oh, this is only that because they have a disability of some sort." It's using the same parts that's going to be accessible and usable for all people. So when we see that, you don't want to use part of having a design that's accessible is to not have to have people that grab it and turn their hands. So if you think of a door knob, you have to grab that kind of with your full hand and twist your arm. But if you have a door handle where it's more of a lever style, you can use your wrist, or you can use your elbow, you could use a foot. You can think of all these different ways that people are able to use the same device, same door handle, be able to get in the room, but it's not taking their hands and twisting it around to use that. It's the idea of kind of getting rid of knob type things and moving to more lever style stuff. Even with windows, if you think of a window lock and the way you open a window, if you turn it into a crank type thing where you can move your hand and just kind of rotate it around, it makes it again accessible for that. Um, and uh, the drawer pulls. If you think of your dressers, and you think of even cabinets, if you get out of there. But if you, instead of again having knobs on there, making something that's more of a loop where you can get a finger in or some type of way to pull it towards you, and then it becomes easier. And again, it's something that's usable by more people. Um, and light switches go into something that's more of a flatter kind of surface, that if you can get it even backlit, it's something that you can use the palm of your hand, or you can use your whole hand to be able to push it, or you can use your cane. You can use even dogs that are trained. They can get up and they can get their paws, and they can turn the lights on and off for you. Um, and having a backlit is another safety thing, that when you're getting up at night, you're not stumbling and bumbling around trying to get in and find the lights. You're able to, oh yeah, that's where the light switch is. I can go and just hit that and be able to get back on there. Um, and then with um, kind of as we get out of there and you start to think of in the bathroom what's going to be accessible, and even in the kitchen what's going to be accessible, it's again getting rid of those knobs to turn on the water. It's, you're going to a single style lever that faces forward, that somebody can just kind of push with their palm or their elbow if they're able to reach, whatever it is, and they can push it up into the direction of the water, that they can kind of turn that on and make it a little bit more accessible and usable for them long term.
Okay, we actually have a suggestion from one of our viewers, Pat, who was saying Pat's suggestion for the bedroom is that um, they have motion sensor lights, night lights for the bathroom, $13 for two on Amazon. And Pat loves having light um, in the morning. and at night when it's still dark. So that's a
That's a
really great
great tip.
suggestion. Thanks for sharing, Pat. We have a question from Chris. He'd like to know if there are any suggestions for older apartment buildings with entry steps and without handrails, which he's requested.
That would be a good conversation to have with the apartment buildings and the maintenance there of I wouldn't think that it would be too hard to install some handrails
Well, it
and
sounds like
request
he's
those.
requested them. Is that something with ADA that they may be required to do? I don't know. And if I'm getting out of your area, just let me know. But I think that's the question because he said he's already requested them.
Yeah, it seems like something that they should be able to. Maybe there's something that is preventing them that they can't attach them to some way. There may be some part of the building that's not allowing it to be attached, but they um, should be able to come up with some type of way to install a handrail for that.
Does Chris have any recourse like with the ADA, or is he just stuck with no handrails on the
No,
building?
there's you should be able to just go through. It should just be a readily achievable barrier that they can remove and accommodation that they should be able to make.
Okay. So we've talked about the bedroom and the bathroom and a little bit about the kitchen because I noticed on your last slide you had faucets. What are things that we can consider like just in other areas of the house?
Another area of the house is to have wider doorways. Again, it's I know that it's hard, especially in the Midwest. We have all of these older homes. So there's a lot of remodeling and retrofitting that has been done over time that makes it, they kind of had smaller doorways for a long time and smaller doors and hallways. But something that we can do, if you're thinking about it with planning, it's to have doors that are at least 32 inches of space with wider hallways. Um, some other things are lighting. It's a pretty simple thing, but make room so that they're brighter. Open up the shades and the blinds during the day so that you can let some of that natural light in. Um, Add higher wattage bulbs in the fixtures so that you can see a little bit easier. And again, kind of what was said earlier with that other tip is getting night lights so that you don't have to kind of stumble around and find the light switches in the dark spaces. You don't want to worry about if you do have throw rugs out or anything like that. Have those night lights out that really help to guide the way, or even having. Um, that's another great suggestion from Pat is having some small flashlights that you know where they are, so that you can use those to get in and out of a room at night.
We also have a suggestion for Chris from Patricia, which is what I really love about these sessions is that people help one another. And Patricia is saying that most insurances require handrails on exterior steps. So check the city's building codes. So that may be a way to address the fact that they seem to be reluctant to install handrails for you.
Yeah.
So, Brian, do you have thoughts about general safety measures that might affect the outside of the home as well?
Something that they can use for the outside is, again, they mentioned motion lights for inside, but having motion lights on the outside that if you're coming up to your porch that maybe you have steps for, that you're able to have that light kick on without you having to, maybe you forgot to turn on the outside light before you went out, and it got dark before you were able to return home. Having a motion light that's there, having peepholes or windows beside a door. It's kind of hard to install a window, but you might be able to get a door with a peephole that makes it a little easier so you can see on the outside. Or even with technology, they make all of the um, kind of getting the doorbells that have cameras on there so you can see and even talk to the people that are outside of your door without actually even having to get up in some of those cases. And you can just say, oh, just leave the package there, or not interested, I don't need to have that. Um, so those are kind of parts that make it kind of easier. Um, Keeping the doors and windows locked are a sure way to make it a little bit safer. Um, and even going back to the simple basics of uh, smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors to make it a little bit safer for some of those unseen parts that you have.
And Brian, I realized that I was moving so quickly, got into the conversation, that there's a slide about what else we can do in the kitchen. So if we could go back to the kitchen for just a bit.
Yeah, this is kind of a great picture. This kind of incorporates a lot of universal design into kitchens. So, but there are a lot of things that you don't think of. Oh, that's somebody that has a disability, or that's only there because of somebody that has a disability. I think this is kind of a nice looking thing that people would appeal to many others, but they're not thinking, oh, that's only for a disability. If you think of the handles that are on there for something very simple, to when you go to open those cupboards, they have the D ring or the oval handles that are there. And then when you even open those, another tip to have is to create pull out drawers. So instead of trying to reach all the way to the back for that can that's been there for 5 years, you can just pull the drawer out, and that drawer will be able to show you what's in there without having to reach or bend over. Something else that's shown in this slide is a great spot is it has the single lever faucet, so that it's right there in the front that you can push it however you want to with your hand, and you can get the thermostat for the water kind of up to it with just using the one lever. Another tip right there that you can see in this is uh, to have lowered cabinets. If you have cabinets of different heights that are there, a person can reach them if they're sitting in a chair. They can reach down to those ones that are all the way on the floor, but they're high enough. You want to kind of think about 18 inches or so is kind of as low as you want to get something. Um, and even something that's really cool about this kitchen design is they actually incorporated right over there, there's a raised countertop to the right of the kitchen sink. And what that actually is that's the dishwasher. So the dishwasher isn't all the way down to the ground. So you have to, again, bend over and reach all the way to the bottom and all the way to the back of those. It's raised up. So it's a little bit more comfortable for everybody to be able to have to reach over with their backs and trying to reach, or you could be sitting in a chair. You can move a chair over to do dishes and have space under the sink for your knees to be able to sit there and have clear room, or a wheelchair user again. Um, and there's lots of little kind of hidden parts of accessibility within this that really don't stand out as being only for somebody with a disability or something like that. This is stuff that when you want to age in place, maybe you don't need these things right now, but somewhere down the line, this might be helpful for you, even if it's a temporary injury or a temporary disability that somebody has. It's going to be helpful and useful long term.
I really do like that. I wish my dishwasher was up above, high, about 18 inches higher. That would be nice for me. Um, Brian, we've talked a little bit about, or you've mentioned universal design, and forgive me for not allowing you to explain what that is. So for those who are watching and may not know what universal design is, can you explain that, please?
Universal design is kind of just a simple concept of creating things that are going to be usable by everybody. So it's having fixtures that are, again, something that you don't have to grab and twist. It's parts of incorporating design into making everywhere a little bit more functional for people and kind of just doing basic planning. Um, there's definitely a lot that can go into it. I would encourage people to look up and think about it because it's, again, something that even though you may not need it right now, universally designed, you can use it going in the future. Or if somebody comes over to your home, if they happen to have a disability or something like that, it's something that would be accessible for them as well.
So we have another question from Pat. And Pat would like to know, is carpet, either area rugs or full carpet, a hazard that should be removed, or does a mat underneath an area rug help?
The full carpet would be um, a suggestion over having an area rug, just because kind of we touched on it earlier that the area rug might get up and create that tripping hazard. Having the mat underneath that usually tries to keep it in one place. I'm guessing that's what they're talking about there. Having the mat underneath that keeps it in one place is a better idea if you need to have the area rug there. But I would suggest, if you're going to have something there so that you don't have just hard floors, to go with a carpet would be a better idea.
Great. Well, as we wind down to a close, Brian, I'd like to thank you. You've given us lots of good tips today, and I appreciate you spending some time with us this morning. If there's one thing that you'd like the viewers to take away from our session today, what would it be?
To think long term. Just because you may not have a disability right now, you may get one down the road. So thinking long term and thinking accessible. Accessible means accessible for all people. It's not specific just for one person. It's something that everybody would be able to use. And it's, again, that aging in place. It's the useful for everybody. It's accessible for people of all abilities and welcoming, and not kind of singling people out for being a little different.
Right. And I would be remiss if I didn't give you a couple minutes to talk about a special event that Disability Connections is hosting. And AARP is one of the many proud sponsors. Can you share a little bit of information about the Thai event with us?
Absolutely, and thanks for mentioning that. Tomorrow night on October 7th at 7 p.m., we're going to have a dance for an architect that's going to come and speak about universal design and making places an inclusive environment. So we're having the inclusion event tomorrow night at 7 o'clock with architect Ileana Rodriguez. She's going to talk about universal design, that she's helped work and create accessible places throughout the world. She's designed buildings and been a consultant for buildings in Kazakhstan. And she works with the U.S. Paralympic teams and helped design some of their museum work that they have in Colorado Springs. And she's still a consultant for the Paralympics, and really an incredible dynamic person that's able to share really a lot of useful information about not only accessibility and design, but kind of people with disabilities and going beyond and being active kind of throughout the world. We would love it for anybody to join. It's completely free to attend, so they can go online and they can register for the event, and they'll send a link right to their email. And from there, they just have to log in and they can get a chance to listen to Ileana kind of share more insightful information from an architect's point of view of creating inclusive and accessible spaces.
Great, thank you. And we did share the link for those who are watching. And again, the session is virtual and it is completely free to attend, thanks to many generous sponsors. And I'm excited about attending the event too. So as we wind to a close, I'd just like to thank everyone for spending some time with us, joining us today. Brian, we've got lots of positive comments regarding the session, so thank you for being here. Hopefully we'll be able to get you back again. But I'd just like to remind our viewers, okay, forgive me, because I'm reading the comments as they come in. We have a student physical therapist who said this was very helpful to listen in on, and thanks for putting it together. So again, we're getting lots of positive comments. So thank you so much for Brian. to Brian for being here. And I'd like to remind our viewers to just visit aarp.org/MI or Michigan to see all of our virtual events. So thank you, and everyone, enjoy your day. Thanks for spending some time with us this morning.